The letter arrived at 10:30 in the morning, which was, by anyone's accounting, the worst possible time. The ceremony was at noon. The guests were already seated in the Grand Ballroom of the Lotte Hotel, 400 of them, arranged in the precise configuration that Chiamaka had spent 11 months planning. The flowers from Jeju, the string quartet from the National Orchestra, the catering negotiated and renegotiated until every element was exactly right. The dress had been delivered at 7. Her mother had cried at 8. Her bridesmaids had been managing the small disasters of hairpins and champagne since 9. At 10:30, a hotel attendant appeared at the bridal suite door with a cream envelope on a silver tray and the professionally neutral expression of a person delivering something they have been paid not to read. The envelope was addressed, in handwriting she did not recognize, to Chiamaka Osamensa, soon to be Ryu. She almost did not open it. It was her wedding morning and she was in her dress and her mother was beside her, and there were 400 people downstairs and 90 minutes between this moment and the rest of her life. She opened it. She read it once, standing. She read it again, sitting down, because she had to sit down. And then she held it in her lap with both hands and looked at the wall of the bridal suite and felt the specific, total silence of a person whose world has just reorganized itself around a new and terrible truth. The letter was 4 pages long. It was written by a woman named Seo Mi-rae, and it said, among other things, the following: that she had been engaged to Ryu Hyun-soo 18 months ago, that the engagement had been ended, not by mutual agreement, not by natural dissolution, but by a deliberate, systematic campaign conducted by the Ryu family to discredit her in the eyes of the social and professional circles that mattered most to them. That documents had been fabricated. That a business deal she had spent 2 years building had been destroyed through interference she could only now prove. That she had lost not only the man she loved but the company she had built and the reputation she had earned. And that she had spent 18 months documenting all of it. The final page of the letter was not addressed to Chiamaka. It was addressed to Hyun-soo, and it said, in language so precise and so cold that Chiamaka could feel the years of grief behind each sentence, I am not sending this to hurt the woman you are marrying. I am sending this so that she knows, before she becomes a Ryu, what that name costs, what it has already cost. I was not warned. I am warning her. What she does with this warning is her choice. But it will be an informed one. Chiamaka sat in her wedding dress in the bridal suite of the Lotte Hotel and read that last paragraph 3 times. Her mother was beside her. She had not spoken since Chiamaka sat down. Mama, Chiamaka said, I'm here. I need 20 minutes. Her mother stood. She shepherded the bridesmaids out of the suite with the efficient authority of a Ghanaian woman who has managed family crises for 40 years and knows that the first thing you give a person in shock is space. The door closed. Chiamaka was alone. She had met Ryu Hyun-soo at a Seoul investment conference 14 months ago. She was 33, a financial consultant from Accra who had built a regional practice that punched well above its weight, brought to the conference by a client. He was 39, the heir to the Ryu Group's financial division, present in his capacity as a speaker on Asian infrastructure investment. He had spoken for 30 minutes and she had agreed with most of it and disagreed sharply with one specific claim about risk modeling in emerging markets, and she had said so, not from the floor, but afterward, in the networking hour, walking directly up to him with a glass of water and the particular directness of a woman who does not edit herself for important rooms. He had looked at her with an expression she had not expected. Not offense, not performance. Genuine interest. Tell me more, he had said. She had. 4 hours later, they were still talking, no longer about risk modeling, or only tangentially, the conversation having expanded in the way conversations expand between two people who have recognized something in each other. They had exchanged numbers. He had called the next morning. She had flown back to Accra, and he had followed 3 weeks later, which was not a small thing for a man of his schedule, and which she had understood as a declaration without any words attached. They had been together for 5 months before he proposed. She had said yes on a Tuesday morning in her Accra kitchen over coffee without ceremony, because ceremony was not what they were, and they both knew it. She had believed she knew him. She had spent 14 months believing she knew him. She read the letter again. Subscribe right now if you're just finding this channel. Because this woman is about to make a decision in the next 60 minutes that will define the rest of this story, and you cannot miss what she does. Hit the bell. Stay with me. She did not call Hyun-soo. She had thought about it. Her hand had gone to the phone twice. But she understood, with the financial consultant's instinct for reading a situation's actual structure, that calling him was not the first move. The first move was to understand what she was holding. She read the letter a fourth time. She read it with the part of her brain that assessed documents professionally, not the part that was afraid, but the part that was precise. She looked at what was claimed and what was evidenced, and what was asserted without proof, and what would require verification. The claims about the fabricated documents, specific, named, dated, the kind of specificity that does not come from fabrication. It comes from 4-year-old receipts kept in a drawer by someone who always knew they would need them. The claims about the business interference, less specific, but structured around a timeline that, she realized with a cold clarity, overlapped with a period Hyun-soo had mentioned obliquely once, a period when his family had been managing some internal matters. She had not asked what the matters were. She had thought it was not her business yet. She put the letter down. She thought about what she knew about the Ryu family. Not from Hyun-soo, from the research she had done herself, because she was a person who researched before she committed. The Ryu family was old money, third generation, intensely image-conscious in the specific way of Korean conglomerate families for whom reputation is not vanity but architecture, the structure upon which everything else is built. She had known this. She had factored it in as context. She had not factored in what it might cost someone who stood in the way of it. She stood up. She went to the window. Seoul was doing its enormous Saturday morning thing below. The traffic, the city moving with indifferent energy of a place that does not pause for weddings. She thought about Seo Mi-rae, who had lost her company and her reputation and the man she loved and had spent 18 months building a case precise enough to hand to the next woman in line. She thought, what kind of woman does that? And she answered herself, the kind who was wronged so completely that warning the next person became the only form of justice available. She picked up the phone. She did not call Hyun-soo. She called the number at the bottom of the letter. Mi-rae answered on the second ring. Her voice was steady, the steadiness of a woman who had prepared for this call, who had sent the letter knowing it might produce exactly this response and had decided to be available for it. MS, Osamensa, she said. MS Seo. Chiamaka looked at the city below. I have 45 minutes before I need to make a decision. I want to ask you some questions, and I need completely honest answers.
Can you do that?
A pause. Yes, Mi-rae said. The documents you mentioned. The fabricated ones. Do you have copies? I have everything. I've had everything for 8 months. I was waiting until I had the complete picture. Why send it today? Of all days. A longer pause. When Mi-rae spoke again, something in her voice had shifted, not softened, but opened. Because I tried to send it 3 months ago, and I stopped myself. I told myself it was too late, that you were too far in, that the right time had passed. And then I asked myself, if someone had sent me this letter the morning of my wedding, would I have wanted it? Her voice was steady. Yes. I would have wanted it. Even at 10:30.
Even with 400 people downstairs.
I would have wanted to know. Chiamaka stood at the window. And Hyun-soo, she said. Did he know?
What his family did.
The longest pause yet. That, Mi-rae said carefully, is the question I cannot answer for you. And I think that is the conversation you need to have with him. Not me. Chiamaka looked at the wedding ring on the dressing table. It had been placed there while her bridesmaids did her hair, to be put on at the altar. A platinum band with a single inset diamond. She and Hyun-soo had chosen it together in a small jeweler in Insadong on a rainy afternoon, arguing pleasantly about whether the solitaire was too conventional and concluding that conventional was not the same as wrong. Thank you, she said to Mi-rae, for the letter, for answering. I'm sorry, Mi-rae said, for the timing, for all of it. Chiamaka hung up. She put the phone down. She went to the door of the bridal suite. She opened it. Her mother was in the corridor, sitting in a chair with the patience of a woman who has been waiting for important things for a very long time. "Mama," Chiamaka said, "can you go downstairs and tell them we need 20 more minutes? And ask Hyun-soo to come up here. Alone." Her mother looked at her for a long moment, reading her, the way only a mother can read a daughter.
"Are you all right?" she said.
Chiamaka thought about this honestly. "I will be," she said. "But first I need to know the truth." He came up in 4 minutes, which meant he had been somewhere close. The groom's suite, perhaps, or already in the lobby. He appeared in the corridor in his morning suit, the tie not yet fully straightened, his hair neat, but with the slight disarray of a man who had been managing his own pre-ceremony nerves, and when he saw her face he stopped. Not because she was crying. She was not crying. Because of the specific quality of stillness she was standing in, which he had seen once before, the first time she had disagreed with him at the investment conference, before she had spoken, in the 3 seconds of calibration where she was deciding exactly what she was going to say and how she was going to say it. He had loved that quality in her from the beginning. The precision of it. The way she did not act before she had thought. He realized now, afraid of it. "Chi-Chi," he said. Her name, the version of it that only people close to her used, that he had been given permission for on the 3rd month.
"Come in," she said.
"Close the door." He came in. He closed the door. He saw the letter on the dressing table. She watched him see it. She watched his face. That was the first answer. Not guilt, or not only guilt. Something more complex than guilt. Recognition. And underneath recognition, the specific expression of a man who has been carrying something for a long time and has just understood that it has arrived before him. "You know what it says," she said. It was not a question.
He sat down.
He did not look away from her, which she noted. "Not the exact letter," he said. "But yes, I know what it says." The room held that sentence.
"Tell me," she said.
"All of it.
Now.
Before I decide anything, I need to hear it from you." He looked at her in her wedding dress, the dress she had shown him a photograph of, but which he was seeing in full for the first time, because he was not supposed to see it until the altar, a tradition she had insisted on because she was a woman who honored certain forms, and he thought, "I am going to lose her in the next 20 minutes. The only question is whether I lose her honestly or dishonestly." He chose honestly. He told her about Mi-rae. Not from the beginning, from the part that mattered. They had been together for 8 months. He had believed it was real. He had told his family because in the Ryu family, you did not keep relationships private. The family was always involved, always assessing, always computing the equation of compatibility against the architecture of reputation and alliance. His father had said, in the specific controlled language of a Ryu patriarch, "She is not what we discussed." He had said, "I did not know we had discussed a specific type of person." His father had said, "You knew." And this was the part that cost him to say, he had known. Not the specifics, not what his family would do or how far they would go. But he had known that the Ryu family had ideas about who belonged in it, and he had introduced Mi-rae knowing those ideas, and he had trusted, he had chosen to trust, that love would be enough of an argument. That she would be seen, and that being seen would be sufficient. He had been wrong. And when things began to go wrong for Mi-rae, when the professional difficulties started, when the relationships in her circle became strained, he had not connected it. Or he had not allowed himself to connect it. He had asked his family once, carefully, whether they had been involved in anything relating to Mi-rae's business affairs. His father had said, "We managed a situation." He had not pushed further. This was the thing that cost him the most to say, and he said it without decoration. "I did not push further because I did not want to know. I ended the relationship because it was the easier path. And I told myself that what had happened to her professionally was not related. I told myself this for 8 months." He stopped. Chiamaka was sitting across from him, both hands in her lap, the letter between them on the dressing table. "And then you met me," she said. "And then I met you." He looked at her. "And I told myself that what had happened before was before. That I was a different person in a different situation, and that this time I would not allow it. That if my family interfered with us, I would stop it. I told myself this was a decision, and not just an intention. Did you tell your family that? A pause. Not in those words. In what words? I told them you were not negotiable. And my father said, every woman is negotiable until she is a Ryu. The room was very quiet. What did you say to that? Chiamaka asked. I said, then we will make her a Ryu. He looked at his hands. I believed that the ceremony would be the thing that settled it. That once you were in the family's interest became protecting you rather than managing you. You thought the wedding would protect me.
Yes.
From the same family that destroyed the last woman who loved you. He said nothing, because there was nothing to say to that. It was true, and it was the specific kind of true that is nowhere to hide. She stood. She went to the window. Below, Seoul moved in its enormous Saturday indifference. I need to ask you one thing, she said. And I need you to answer it the way you just answered everything else, completely, without protecting yourself. Yes. If the letter had not arrived today, would you have told me? Any of this. Ever. The longest silence of the morning. She waited. I don't know, he said. And then, with a precision that cost him. I would like to believe yes. But I cannot promise you that because I cannot promise you who I would have been in a year or 5 years, inside that family, with that knowledge. She turned from the window. She looked at him sitting in her bridal suite in his morning suit on their wedding day. He looked back at her. He did not try to reach for her. He did not try to salvage it with a gesture. He simply sat with what he had said and let her hold it. She thought, this is the most honest he has ever been with me. She also thought, it took a letter and 45 minutes of crisis to get here. Both things were true. Tell me right now, what would you do? The wedding is in 30 minutes. 400 guests downstairs. The man you love just told you the most honest and the most terrible thing at the same time. Comment below. Share this story. Because the next 30 minutes are going to change everything. She asked him to leave the room. Not permanently, she said that clearly. Give me 10 minutes. I need to think without you in it. He nodded. He stood. He went to the door and stopped. Chiamaka, he said. Her full name. Not Chi-Chi. Whatever you decide, I understand. I want you to know that I understand that whatever you decide is the right decision. I don't say that to make it easier for you to stay. I say it because it is true. He left. She stood alone in the bridal suite in her wedding dress, and she thought. She thought about Mi-rae, who had sent a letter she could have held back, who had given her information at the worst possible moment because the alternative, silence, was a kind of complicity. She thought about what it had cost Mi-rae to write it. The specific courage of a person who has been damaged choosing to spend some of what remains on warning a stranger. She thought about Hyun-soo, who had just told her the truth in the specific, complete way that is harder than lying, because lying preserves something, and the truth he had just given her preserved nothing except her right to know. She thought about her father, who had died 4 years ago and who had told her once, driving across Accra in the specific gridlock of a Friday afternoon, Chi-Chi, the question is never whether a person is perfect. The question is whether they are honest about where they are not. She thought about the Ryu family, about a patriarch who said every woman is negotiable, about what it meant to walk into that structure with her eyes open versus what it meant to walk into it without knowing. She thought about 400 people in the Grand Ballroom downstairs, and the flowers from Jeju and the string quartet, and 11 months of planning. She thought about the ring on the dressing table. She thought about the conversation she needed to have, not today, not in the next 10 minutes, but the conversation that this morning had made necessary, about the Ryu family, about what she would and would not accept, about what it meant to be a Ryu and what it meant to remain Chiamaka Oseimensa inside that name. She went to the door. She opened it. Hyun-soo was in the corridor. He had not gone far. She looked at him. We are going to be very late, she said. He was very still.
We, he said.
We, she said. But I need you to understand something before we go downstairs. This conversation, what you told me today, is not finished. It is the beginning of a conversation that we are going to have completely, and your family is going to be part of it, and there are going to be things I require that are not negotiable. Do you understand?
Yes.
I am not marrying the Ryu family's idea of what I should be. I am marrying you. The version of you that just told me the truth when it cost him everything to do it. That version. not the one that didn't push further. He looked at her. I understand, he said. Good. She picked up the ring from the dressing table. She held it in her hand. Then let's go. They were 22 minutes late. 400 guests sat in the Grand Ballroom of the Lotte Hotel and waited in the patient, slightly concerned way of people who understand that weddings run late but who could feel, in the particular quality of the morning's energy, that something had happened above them. The hotel staff had been discreet. The string quartet had cycled through their waiting repertoire twice. When the doors finally opened and the music shifted, the collective exhale of 400 people was audible. Chiamaka walked down the aisle on her mother's arm. Her father was gone, and she had decided 2 years ago that her mother would walk with her, because her mother had walked every important walk beside her, and this was the most important one. Her mother's hand on hers was steady and warm and said, without words, everything that needed to be said. She looked at Hyun-soo at the altar. He looked back at her with an expression she had not seen on his face in 14 months, not the controlled professional expression, not the warmth he showed her in private, but something rawer and more complete than both. The expression of a man who has just been given something he knows he nearly lost and understands, with total clarity, what it means that he is not. She walked to him. She stood beside him. The officiant began. The vows were the standard form. They had chosen the traditional vows because Chiamaka believed that the traditional words, said honestly, meant more than original ones said performatively. To have and to hold. In sickness and in health. To love and to cherish. Forsaking all others. When it was his turn, Hyun-soo said each phrase in a specific, deliberate way of a man for whom the words have just acquired their full weight for the first time. Not performance. Reckoning. When it was her turn, she said them looking directly at him. Not at the room, not at the flowers, not at the photographer. At him. The specific, precise look she had given him at the investment conference when she had walked up and disagreed, and his expression had shifted from offense to genuine interest. She said, to love and to cherish. Forsaking all others. She said it knowing what she knew. She said it as a decision rather than a feeling, or as both, because decisions and feelings are not opposites and the best vows contain both. He put the ring on her finger. It fit exactly as it had fit in the jeweler in Insadong. The reception was, by the account of those present, extraordinary. Not because everything went perfectly, because the people at the center of it had a quality about them that the guests could feel without naming. The quality of two people who have been tested already and have arrived at the ceremony from the other side of something, which gives the day a gravity and a warmth that planned perfection cannot produce. Her mother danced with an energy that suggested she had been holding it in reserve. His family was present and correct and watchful, which she expected. She met his father's gaze once across the room. A direct, unhurried look that said, without words, I know what your family is capable of, and I am here anyway, and you will not find me as manageable as you hope. He held her gaze for a moment, and then looked away. It was a beginning, not a resolution. She knew that. She was a person who did not confuse beginnings with endings. She found a moment alone at the edge of the reception, near the windows that looked out over the Han River in the late afternoon, the same river she had looked at from the bridal suite window that morning, now gold in the October light. She stood with her champagne and let herself feel the full weight of the day, the letter, the corridor, the vows, this. Her friend Amara appeared beside her. Amara had been her bridesmaid and her closest friend since university in London, and was the kind of person who knew when to speak and when to stand. She stood for a moment. Then, are you all right? Yes, Chiamaka said. Really? She thought about it honestly. I'm married, she said, to a man who told me the truth today, when he could have lied. And I knew something he didn't know I knew, which is that telling the truth today cost him everything, and he did it anyway. She looked at the river. That's not nothing. No, Amara said. It's not. It's not everything either, Chiamaka said. There is a great deal of work ahead.
His family.
The conversation we haven't finished. The things that need to change. She sipped the champagne. But I married the version of him that told the truth. And I intend to hold him to being that person. Amara was quiet for a moment. And the letter? She said. The woman who sent it? Chiamaka looked at the river. I'm going to call her next week, she said. I'm going to ask if there is anything she needs. If there is anything that can be corrected. Made right. As much as anything can be made right.
She paused.
She warned me. She didn't have to do that. She could have been bitter and kept it and watched from a distance. Instead, she spent 18 months building a case and sent it to a stranger on her wedding morning because she thought the stranger deserved to know. She looked at Amara. That deserves something in return. Amara looked at her. You are, she said slowly, a remarkable person. I had a good father, Chiamaka said simply, and a better mother. She looked at the river in the gold light. Behind her, the reception moved in its warm, human, imperfect way, music and laughter and the clinking of glasses and her mother's voice rising above it all with the specific authority of a woman who has decided to celebrate completely. Hyun-soo found her at the window a few minutes later. He stood beside her without touching her, which was right. He was learning the geography of when she wanted contact and when she wanted presence, and this was a presence moment. They looked at the river together. I want to find a way to make it right, he said. With Mi-rae, what my family did. I know that the money cannot go back and the time cannot go back, but
I know, she said.
We'll figure it out. Together. She glanced at him. That's what today means. Together. Including the difficult parts. He looked at her. Together, he said. She turned from the window. She took his hand. The first time she had taken his hand since the bridal suite, and she felt him receive the gesture with the careful, complete attention of a man who understands exactly what it means.
Come on, she said.
My mother is about to give a speech, and if we're not present for it, she will simply describe us in our absence, and that will be significantly more embarrassing.
He laughed.
A real laugh. The same real laugh she had heard in the second week. The one that arrived suddenly and was slightly undone and was the most honest thing about him. She walked back into the reception holding her husband's hand. The room received them. The string quartet was playing something from their waiting repertoire, the piece they had played twice while the guests waited, now transformed by the occasion into something that had always been meant for this moment. Her mother was already at the microphone. Chiamaka stood in the doorway and listened to her mother begin. In Chui first, then English, the specific cadence of a woman describing a daughter she has watched her whole life, and she felt the full, complicated, honest weight of the day settle into something she did not have a single word for. Not happiness, exactly. Or not only that. Something more durable. The knowledge that the thing she was standing in had been tested before it began, and had held. That she had read the letter and made the call, and asked the question and heard the truth and chosen anyway. Not blindly, not out of sunk cost, not because of the flowers or the guests or the dress. Because of the man in the corridor who had said I don't know when a lie would have been easier, and who had sat with what he'd said without trying to soften it. Because of the woman who had spent 18 months building a case and used it to warn a stranger. Because of her father, who had said, the question is not whether a person is perfect. Because she was Chiamaka Oseimensa, now also Ryu, but Chiamaka first and Chiamaka always, and she had never once done anything without knowing exactly why. The reception held her. The river was gold outside. The story was not over. It was, in almost every meaningful sense, just beginning. But it had begun honestly. And honestly was enough. That's the story. The letter arrived on the wedding day, and instead of destroying the day, it made it real. If this story reached you, share it right now with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't. And drop a comment. What was the moment that got you? I read every single one.
See you at the next story.
And Afro K Heartstrings, Story 16.